Museumnext Dublin invited the Chester Beatty Library and the Creative Museum project to hold a fringe event, and we invited local makers and museum practitioners to meet delegates of Museumnext Dublin and find out more about creativity, innovation, collaboration, as well as the Creative Museum project and what's happening on the ground here in Ireland.
When you start inviting this creativity, the museum itself changes as well. Curators' roles were turned upside down. People who never had any more responsibility than writing text labels all of a sudden turned out to be the world's best storytellers.
Creative practices will be presented and illustrated by makers, and the next step of the project would be to experiment and train museum professionals to these creative practices.
I kind of proceed with the attitude, I'm not sure everyone would agree with it, that everyone is a maker, they just might not know it yet. Which, even if it isn't true, will drive you to wonderful things, or at least beautiful failures.
So what exactly is a makerspace? Well, that can actually be quite difficult to define because they all tend to have their own personalities based on the needs of the users.
They gave a very brief overview of current practice, as well as quick-fire workshops that lasted 15 minutes, and it gave our participants a sense of how they can work with their local makers.
So we're going to try and make bridges that span 30 centimetres out of lollipop sticks, using some Pritt stick and whatever bits of cardboard and other stuff we have around, and then at the end we're going to destroy each bridge and attempt to see which bridge can hold the most weight. I think museums suffer like all big organisations where the staff and employees can't adapt fast enough with the changing landscape of technologies, and I feel that makers are the bridge to build this new, exciting technology and bring that into museums.
I think the one thing everybody, not just makers, but technologists and content developers and everybody, they're always looking for good source material, something that can inspire them, something that can get the creative juices flowing. And I think museums and galleries have that in spades. So the ideal collaboration is to kind of give people access to that so they can come up with interesting new projects and ideas and collaborations.
As creative types of people, what they can do is they can actually reimagine the exhibitions and sort of contents within a museum space.
The more we can disseminate information by doing and by seeing and by feeling, I think that's going to have a bigger impact on culture long term, and people start to adopt that information into their own lives.
The ideal collaboration is one that has kind of fuzzy boundaries and blends museum, maker, audience, producer, contributor, and is maybe a bit free form.
I'd love there to be some sort of a residency where you have a series of spaces where you can have rotating makers maybe stay in a particular museum and absorb what kind of vibe that particular museum has or what it is that they want to push or encourage, and then they respond and find new ways of making that information more accessible and more available to people.
You have to remember that people doing historical reenactments, making old tools in the same way, they're makers as well. Let's not get caught up in this whole maker movement as a newfangled marketing terminology.
The history of making is the history of museums. So the future of museums is also the future of making. And I think what we have to go back to is the origins of this inspiration for making and get away from the elitism and curatorial hierarchy that has developed within the museum culture.
I guess for a successful collaboration, what needs to be in place is probably properly managed expectations. And I don't mean downplaying them, but I mean being clear about what your goals are.
It's also remembering about who the end product is for. Is the outcome for the museum? Is the outcome for the maker? Or is it actually for the collection? Is it for the visitor? Is it for the wider public?
Creativity comes from the bottom up, and that collaboration is key, and that there are risks to be taken because risks produce wonderful creative processes.
I think listen to each other, sit down, have conversations, don't be afraid to fail, try things you've never heard of before. If the idea is ridiculous, it means it's never been done before, so it's worth progressing.
Making, be it things, words, theory, or code, is how we experience the music of the world's logic. There's little better. So that really nails it for me.